Kim, welcome to the latest edition of Rally's Founders Talks. One of the things, Kim, I think that, I definitely want you to know is that Rally's about helping very passionate entrepreneurs transform their ideas and existing work into sustainable ventures that create positive social change. And so when we say social change, we're talking about, they're dealing with trying to solve social issues, economic issues, environmental issues, and Rally is the best place to get that started, especially for those early stage people. But the other thing that is important, and why you're here today, is because we believe Orlando has all that it takes, that all that is needed in order for it to be a hub for social entrepreneurs internationally. So no matter where entrepreneur or social entrepreneur is at in the world, we believe they should take a stop here in Orlando because we have all the talent, resources, and networks to make it happen, or at least push them on to their next part of their journey. You obviously represent one of those people, and so we're happy to have you here today. So welcome, Kim.
Thanks.
You ready for this?
I'm ready.
All right, you're ready. So Kim, we always start off these things. We want to know a little bit about baby Kim. Like who is baby Kim, and like what are kind of the events that led baby Kim to, that kind of shaped her, that was part of her formation of who the big version of Kim is that we're looking at today. Or I'm sorry, you like to go by Kimberly. The big version of you today. Like, what are some of the, who's baby Kim, and then what are the things that shaped you into the things that you care about today? Talk to us a little bit about that.
Okay. Baby Kim. I don't know the last time I really thought about that, but if I think through who I am today, I think it was a little bit of in what the work I'm doing today, quite frankly. My background, essentially, like you said, I am an Orlandoian. I've been here almost all my life. And I think two things kind of collided for me. One, I've always had a strong desire to want to help people. Didn't know what that meant. I was actually an only child. And my parents were divorced at a very early age. And so I was forced to reach out and build relationships and find meaningful relationships for me early on. So I think I've always kind of been in the relationship business because that connection is something that fed my soul. With that said, I also lived in the experience capital, theme park capital of the world. And for those of you, if you've been in Orlando for a very long time, if you can imagine growing up here as a little girl, I spent hours and hours and hours at a magical place of people who knew what it meant to create an experience, so to speak. And for whatever it's worth, I think it's somewhat jaded. It actually ruined me a little bit because when you're in that world and you spend a lot of time at theme parks and you feel the emotion that comes from those interactions. I don't know about you, but I've never looked at a fireworks show the same way. You're kind of spoiled early on, but it definitely exposed me to that aspect. And I, 16 years old even, I got a job at Universal Studios.
So you're attracted to this. I mean, like you're like, hey, I love being at this place, and therefore you didn't go to Disney. You ended up going to their stepsister house.
Well, Universal was new in town. It had just arrived. First year it opened, and I was the opening theme park, part of the opening theme park team. So, I was super excited, got a job there. I mean, really, that we spent hours of time testing out all of the roller coasters, trying out all of the food, got to meet all of the Hollywood stars that had a ride associated with them that essentially came in for grand opening day. I mean, I was clear, I had the best job in
Okay.
the world at that point.
Is that
And
16?
yeah,
Oh, that's
16.
pretty good.
Back then they weren't as funny about how old you were and what
Yeah.
type of role you got.
Okay. But they weren't breaking any. Let's be clear, because we don't want Universal Studios to decide to sponsor us and hear this, and yeah,
No,
we said they're breaking child labor laws.
no, yeah, they weren't. They
All
weren't. I
right.
think just volunteering for a time and then I officially got the job. But
Okay. Good. Good.
yeah. So I worked there, loved it. I mean, it was a fabulous experience. And, what I really learned about being at Universal is I learned that there's actually an art and an art form to creating a memorable moment for someone. There actually is a lot of intentionality and work behind the scenes of orchestrating and staging that magic that you feel. And so it
Yeah.
was a real happy time for me in my life.
Were you so okay? So you're 16, but were you, when you're having this experience, did you like, was that a conscious thought that you had there, like, oh, there's a lot of, like, I like this experience thing, I see there's a lot of effort into it, or was this more like a thought that later on that you had, like, oh wow, like when I look back on this experience, it was a lot of effort or intentionality put into it, and uh,
Yeah.
so was this
So I
a,
did good question. I didn't know what I didn't know back then. I
yeah,
knew in my heart, I felt things were different. And I knew that it was different because I actually was one of the members who um, we had these blue screen movies. And so I was the one that took groups of people through creating their own video and experience, and they chose it. And so I'm the one that had to help create and evoke the emotion to make the video from the guest member.
right,
And so I knew, like, firsthand, I was having the work that it took to orchestrate an experience for someone. But I didn't know until later on in my life, in my career, and actually exposure to what's called the experience economy, that it was actually a thing. And that's when it started to really cement
okay.
for me.
Yeah, so I want to get into that, but I want to hold that tab for a later part of this conversation. But before
Mhm.
we get there, I want to track through. So you talked a little bit about baby Kim being born in Orlando, or not born in Orlando, but being transplanted in Orlando when you're two.
Mhm.
You, your parents, but this connecting to other people, finding connections. You growing up in the backyard of Disney, Universal Studios, seeing how they conduct experience, interfacing with them, and then you leave and you go to college and you study what?
Yeah. So I realized at that point I was going to have to get a real job and something that, not that it wasn't real, but um, professionally speaking, I had to decide what I was going to go to school for. And I remember that part of in my early years that I was really, really passionate about helping people. I really wanted to be a veterinarian, and then had essentially shifted to physician and potentially a physical therapist.
Hmm.
And so I decided to go to school to be in the healthcare arena and study that. And fortunately enough for me, they give you volunteer hours for a reason when you're going to school, and they send you right there on the field, a side physical therapist. And I quickly realized it's probably best for the patient and myself that I don't do that, because I practically fainted 5 times.
Yeah,
And it almost even just, I thought my dreams were shattered of being in healthcare. And then I thought, well, no, I can go still and I can play a support role, but behind the scenes.
right.
And so I studied health information management, got into healthcare, and then quickly started to get into leading operational and culture work within the healthcare arena. And kind of, quite frankly, soaking up then, because I was an experience junkie, soaking up what it meant to create positive experiences within healthcare. And it was very different.
And yeah, I
I,
mean, like the question is
yeah.
like, is that, I think like those two terms for like they belong in different rooms, like healthcare, positive experience, because people usually engage a hospital or some healthcare thing when things are falling off the rails. Um, and like the experience of it is not there. So I guess like now that you are in college, you decide that that practicing medicine is not good for you, but you can be on the other side, the supportive role. Then you
Yeah.
move into your healthcare work, and was that with Florida Hospital or?
Well, I worked for, I first started with a physician group. It was actually
Okay.
called Crew Care back in the day, and then it transferred to South Physician Associates, and they're
Oh yeah, yeah.
oriented with Orlando Health.
Oh,
So I worked on the physician side and had a real deep understanding of what it meant to run physician clinic practices and what have you. And then I shifted to acute care.
okay.
And yes, at that time it was Florida Hospital, and worked in Central Florida with the 8 Florida hospital systems that
Yeah.
was here. And it was a amazing experience. I spent 20 years kind of living and breathing the hospital and acute care setting.
Yeah, I think So one of the things that we see is proven every time we have one of these talks. You can see how people's life experiences, like what you do and the things that you care about, just didn't form out of anywhere, right? Like there were these things that happened. For example, you had this experience in Orlando. You had an early on experience with like the magic of experience, and some people arguably would do it the best. Um, then you had this notion of like wanting to help people, which obviously drove you to thinking about, okay, well, healthcare is the best place to like I can help people, because then
Mhm.
you say, well, I can't do it there, right? And then you say, okay, I'm going to healthcare management, and then somehow it's like, well, what happened to all that experience stuff? And the reality is that it came to a point where you're helping people in healthcare, but then also this experience piece started to collide and intersected into the work that ultimately you ended up really focusing on while you were at
Yep.
Advent Health, which is or were you like the chief experience
I was
officer?
Yeah, well, I did a couple of things. I was over strategic operations for a while. And
Okay.
basically, what I did there is I helped leaders develop their metrics and goals, and pushed our strategic initiatives forward. Did a lot of physician culture work there. Very meaningful, great work. And then ended up getting into the experience world, and essentially was the experienced leader for the company in Central Florida, and started, if you will, an experience revolution. And basically, what that was is we had a framework and structure in which we went out and found and grew and educated and started to shift the mindset of champions and experience in the organization, and then began to teach them how to be consumer centric and actually people centric. Because essentially you have to heal and achieve experience excellence from the inside out. You cannot look outside first and see who you want to be. You have to start to heal that inside with your teams, your physicians, your volunteers, and that will exude the experience that you want with your consumers. And so we did a lot of that work, and it was very rewarding.
So before we get into that, like talk about the okay. So you start off with strategic, right? Like
Mhm.
helping leaders develop a set of metrics that will allow them to determine whether or not strategy is working or not working, and then you bridged over from there to um, the experience side. Like what dragged? Like okay, first of
Yeah,
all, was the experiencing a new thing that they created? Was that like
yeah,
a new thing, or did you step into an existing role? And if it was a new thing, like explain why did they start the new thing?
good question.
And then
Yeah.
why did they bring you over to it?
Okay. So, you know, we'd always been, healthcare is behind from an industry perspective on experience, and always has been a lagging industry, because people go there because they expect you to save their life and fix something, and the impetus isn't necessarily on hospitality and creating an experiential or a hospitality environment. And it's very hard. Nurses and physicians did not go to school to get into this experience thing and learn hospitality management. They went to school to save people's life, and we're very happy that they did, right? But at some point, they knew that the shift of healthcare and consumers wanted an experience, not just to be helped clinically. That started to become what was expected, and for years, I'd say that it was a 10-year journey of knowing that they needed to improve experience along with the rest of the world and other healthcare institutions, but they didn't essentially know how to get there. A lot of buzz on team engagement, knowing you need to improve your team and your engagement before you could even do that. And then essentially, I think with the experience economy and the rise of that thought process, and it really taking shape in other industries, healthcare began to realize, oh, we need to create a specific focus on experience and putting that in the cornerstone of everything that we do. And with that, what it meant is we needed to create a governance structure for it. We needed to create actual leaders that are overseeing experience. That's what they wake up and do every day. That there's not 10,000 other things that they're focused on. And then that's what truly led to that. And I think that it was natural for me because I'm a bit of a cultural savant, and because of my background and understanding that there's certain design principles and themes and models that go into experience, it was just a natural fit for me.
So for them, the experience, customers were having this expectation. I'm assuming they were learning it just from, I guess, surveys, or maybe they're looking out outwardly. But what was the benefit of moving in it? Did they feel like was it a competitive thing, like other systems were doing it?
Yeah.
Or so when you have a couple hospitals in the ring, you're trying to attract people to you, and therefore you have to have was it the competitive, like the realization that they would have? Okay.
Yeah. So two things. So there's this thing called the Baldrige Award that was getting awarded to organizations that excelled in all of their metrics. And typically healthcare never got that award. And then hospital systems started to get that award. And then other hospital systems started to look in and go, wow, how did you do that? And there were some underpinning obvious ways that happened. But essentially the government has stepped in and said, from a pay for performance perspective, we're going to incentivize you now in a different way, and we're going to add experience to the game. It's not just about safety, it's not just about quality, but you're going to have to improve your experience, and you need to figure out how to measure it, and we want to see your results. And so when that happened, all of the healthcare systems realized, okay, this is real, it's not going away, and we're going to have to figure this out.
Yeah. Okay. Now that's cool. That's helpful insight. Now let's talk to about this experiencing. What does that mean? Just break that down for us, unpack that for us, so that we can first of all understand what it means, and then we can try to figure out how we can apply it, or entrepreneurs can apply it on whatever level to help them out. So unpack experience.
Sure.
What do you mean by that?
Okay, so experience, it is a bit of a nebulous concept for many, and one of the reasons why is because it's individualized. It's very individual for every single person. What it means, though, is it's a key interaction that has created a moment, created a lasting impression within someone's mind. You have experiences all day long.
Mhm.
And typically those experiences generate a feeling and evoke an emotion, no matter what you're doing. And you have them with your family members, whatever you're doing. If you're cooking breakfast, if you're about to go to work, that's all an experience. You also have an experience with a business, and a lot of times what happens is that experience is coupled with a string of key interactions, and you companies have to look at the moments in which are the most important to a team member, to a consumer, and they have to begin to look at how they can improve that experience from a positive aspect and take away the negative cues, because just one of those interactions can completely change the entire experience or interaction you're having with an organization or with a business. So, and it, if you look at commodities and products and services, we've evolved, and the experience economy really focuses on people paying for an experience. And we've seen that, right? I mean, how many of us spend our time to go to a place where we're delivering or we're expecting a feeling? You're paying for a feeling. That's what you're doing. And the companies and the brands that will be the companies of the future are those that will pay special attention to nurturing feelings and to ensuring that the feelings that are generated are positive and not negative. It's memory memorabilia that gets
Yeah.
infused within that.
Yeah. Huh. That's interesting. One of the things is, I wonder if because like that's such a vital thing like that, and when I think about a lot of organizations, they tend to be very um male dominated, um and it's like I wonder if those who are leading this charge, is there a certain group that more favors or is better at this, being in touch with their feelings.
Yeah.
Like I get accused of that all the time, like not being in touch with my feelings, right? Like you're not in touch with your feelings, like whatever that means.
Yeah, but I
Did you eat
know, no, I
today?
hear you, but if I ask the group right now, describe for me your favorite brand that, or your favorite company you interact with on a normal basis, and tell me why, and tell me what feeling that you get within that interaction with that brand. You could tell me that regard.
That's actually that's no, that's true.
You could tell me a couple reasons why. I could. Chick-fil-A is, I love them. I
Right.
love them. I mean, how many of you go through and you realize they're creating an experience for you? You could take Chick-fil-A and completely compare them to another service provider in a fast food industry and realize there's something different that happens there. You get a
Yeah.
feeling. And it's not just an interaction and the soft stuff of how people treat you, which is excellent. And there's specific things that they say, and they say them all the time, but it's their process. It's
Right.
amazing. They orchestrate the entire process. Everything's staged. Everything's very intentional. They're masters of experience in the food industry.
Yeah. That's interesting. Yeah, you're right. I mean, just because you have good food, like the place can be terrible, right? And you don't want to
Yeah.
go there. And when I think Chick-fil-A compared to like some other fast food restaurant like Arby's, I don't know why I picked Arby's, but but they one of the things I've always noticed about Chick-fil-A is that they engage, so they go out and they meet you, and they are proactive in communicating to you, letting you know that they see you, being nice to you and all that kind of stuff. Whereas other restaurants seem just more like it's just transaction where they're just like you come to them, they're not gonna say anything, and then you say, "Okay, can I order?" They're like, "What do you need?"
Yep.
"Oh, I need X, Y, Z." Okay, boom, boom, boom. Thank you for your order, and then you're out. You're out. And so, yeah, you're right. It is a different experience, which I guess explains why there's
Yeah,
never.
and Kyle, 20%. So studies show that 20% of the buying decisions are made logical. 80% of buying decisions from consumers are emotional.
That is true.
It is. So, why wouldn't we make sure that we're focused on the emotions that we evoke for our teams and consumers if we essentially want to elevate our business?
That is true. So what does that look like? Unpack that for us. Like, okay, so our businesses, our fellows aren't operating brick and mortar businesses. They're operating online businesses, services, and things like that. So, like, first of all, what is experience? What are the things that are part of the experience? Like, is it a textual thing? Is it a smell thing? Is it a word thing? And then, like, for someone who is operating a non like a online business, like how does that translate for them? Like where are those opportunities to create experience exist within those mediums?
What was the second question? Say it again.
So we have people who are doing online businesses, right? So I'm
Mhm.
assuming that part of the experience just traditionally is like if I have a brick and mortar, it's about does the place smell good? Like when I walk into
Mhm.
the restaurant, does it smell like cat food or does it smell
Yeah.
delicious, right? That's important.
Mhm.
Or lavender, right? um do like the textures, right? Like, like is the walls painted funky brown or green, right? Pea green, like I don't like that. So that's the experience thing. And then, audibly, am I hearing good music, bad music, food? So there's a variety of things, both physical and, yeah, physical, that impact that experiencing. And so I wanted to know what are those things. And then, but I also recognize that we're dealing with fellows who have online businesses or products or services that are like software and stuff like that, where they're delivering some kind of widget.
Yep.
How do they create an experience? Like, what does that experience look like for them if they're missing
Absolutely.
out on the textural, smell, all those other traditional ways?
Absolutely. Well, a couple things. So you're speaking to the multisensory aspect of experience that's very important, and there's a there's um, very important in the sense that experience has themes that run through them.
Okay.
There are experience principles that are infused in designing an experience. And then there are things that you need to think through also when improving and creating an enhancing experience, which are the multisensory aspects. How does something look? How is it staged? You're right. What do you smell when you walk in the place? What do you hear? Is there a touch? Is there something that you walk away with that sinks into your memory of that experience and reminds you for later? And so those things are all very important, but there's also principles in the way that you orchestrate your experience for your consumer. And that is whether you have an online business or you have a face to face business, it can be how someone interacts with you online. Is there friction in the technology or the access for them? I mean, one of my favorite online companies is Amazon. And it's because it's literally frictionless. It's the easiest thing in the world to do and shop. I mean, they have figured out everything. They told me what I need to look at next. Shipping's clear. I'm a Prime. They've created the stickiness and the glue. Anyone can do that. Another person from an online perspective that I think does a relatively good job, for me at least, and there's some opportunities, is Apple. And if you think through it, like when you call Apple, I don't know if anyone has done this, but they actually ask you what music that you would prefer to listen to. Do you want to listen to jazz or rock or classical? And I mean, they're already
That's good.
taking a personalized aspect and they're infusing it in your interaction, even though you're not face to face. And personalization is actually one of the principles that you need to think through when you're creating experiences. And
Okay.
so,
So the first, okay, because this is about to get. I feel like this is about to get really good. This is going to get really fascinating. So the first step is for these entrepreneurs, the first thing they need to do if they want to incorporate do well experience. The first thing they need to do is what?
the first thing they need to do is understand what is really happening. They need to go out and truly, if their company's already up and running. So I know if it's not, obviously they need to do some research and see what their competitors doing, what's really happening out there.
Okay.
If they're already having interactions with volunteers, if this is the statement is true for volunteers that are helping you in if you're doing a social impact cause. But what does the experience today look like? What is your baseline? And you have to be open enough to ask the hard questions, and you have to be open enough to listen to them. And it may hurt, and it may not necessarily be what you intended, because in your mind, you're right there in the middle of setting up your business. I know I'm doing this myself. And I almost don't want to ask because I spent all this time putting a company together. And I'm like, oh, great. Now I'm going to go ask them if what I intended and what I designed for is actually happening. And if the answer is no, or if it's anything but, a 5-star, I'm going to have to dig deep and go figure out what that is, and go then design and remove that pit, because at that point that's a pit in your experience, and you need to remove it and begin to build what, if you read uh, the Moments book, it starts to talk about peaks, and you want to start to build peaks in your experience.
Okay. So the first thing is you got to get out the building. You got to talk to your volunteers. You got to talk to like your employees or your staff. You got to talk to your customers and say, and ask the hard question like, wait, is it asking the hard question? Like, what don't you like about your interaction with me? Is it?
Well, you're really gaining empathy. I sometimes think it's, when I say the hard question, I think that it's not necessarily a question. It's hard work, and it's being intentional about making yourself available and actually doing the work of going and doing your own research and gaining empathy.
Okay, got it. Oh, got it. I understand. Okay, gaining empathy. Okay, so the thing that you're trying to uncover is what is impeding, what is causing friction in this person or this group's interaction with me. Okay, so that's the first thing, right? And then
Right.
the second thing is like, now what do I do with that? I got a bunch of feedback here. People tell me everything that's impeding them. It's a good long list. What do I do next?
Right. Well, you don't want to just ask either what's not going well. You want to know what's going well, and
Oh,
you want to know what moments are really creating that amazing feeling for someone.
okay.
Because then what you do next is you start to implement strategies that remove the negative cues, which are those things that were causing that negative experience, whether it's a space, an interaction with someone, maybe it's your training that needs to be fixed, maybe it's a process, maybe it's efficiency, whatever that is. You remove those things first, and then you start to build and create your signature moment around the experiences that you keep hearing your customers and team members describe that you do really well and that mean a lot to them. And you build on it. And you build on it in such a way that it happens every single time in every interaction, and you are relentless about it.
So wait, this sounds like the magic of it, right? The
Yeah.
signature moment. What is this signature moment that you're speaking of?
Well, it can be different for everybody. Everyone can have something completely different.
But it's the same. It's like this thing happens. Any interaction that the Better Company does, like every interaction I have with them, I should experience this signature moment somewhere
Sure.
in it, right? And so
Yeah.
it seems like it's very focused, very intentionally, and it's put it into this thing.
Yep. It
Um,
could either be, so Kyle, like what I mean by that is it could be that you are always greeted the same way by this company and it makes you feel good, or you are always sent away with a fond farewell in the same way, or you, you know, are there's a personalized element in how a company interacts with you that you know happens every single time and you don't waver from it. I I can think of, and you probably all could think of, but not realize it's a signature moment for a company that they've actually embedded in their organization that you experience every time you're there. Moe's. Has anyone ever been to Moe's? What?
it's like Chipotle, right?
Yeah.
Lime chips.
Yeah. What do they say when you walk in Moe's?
Welcome to Moe's.
Yeah, welcome to Moe's. And they all say it in a happy way and it puts a smile on your face. And it's like, wow, it just gives you a great feeling, right?
Mm.
You're walking in and you're not feeling that you're bothering them. You're feeling welcomed already.
Is it like when Walmart welcomes me?
Yeah, well, they're a little happier at Moe's, but
Right. I always feel like the person's welcoming me doesn't really want to welcome to
yeah.
Walmart.
No, you know, Starbucks, they do a few things. They write your name on your cup. They call your name out.
Oh,
They
yeah.
could have done a number. They could have made it impersonal and just called up, you know, the cup itself. Like
Yeah.
there's just things that people do differently. Credo, there, when I go in, it has shocked me at the very beginning when you ask, how much do you want to pay? And it always gets me in my heart. It's almost like not even knowing it. It's a signature moment for me because every time you ask that question, and I was there yesterday and it was asked of me, I was like, wow, see, they do things, they're here for a greater purpose. And it's a good feeling in my heart. You just like you can't complain. Not that I would, because the coffee is fantastic, but it's a signature moment for me when I'm in Credo.
That's good. That's good. So every entrepreneur on this call, every fellow on this call, should be thinking about their signature moment um, that they can amplify throughout their processes and stuff. And that's really cool. Okay, so
And one more thing, it doesn't even have to be with consumers. It is a signature moment in how you treat your vendors and how you treat, you know, other people you're trying to sell to. Like, how do you interact with them? You know, what's your experience with them? What's your customer service? How do you follow up? What's your messaging feel and sound like? So, you know, it's just the whole
yeah.
thing.
So essentially what you're saying is that the fellows on this call and those who are watching this and other people watching this, that they should consciously be thinking about what is that signature moment, a moment that creates invoke a great warm feeling emotion that you can provide or give to not only your customers but to your employees, to your vendors
Mm-hmm.
at most interactions that you have with them, right? I mean, because you don't want to do it every time. Like, I don't want to be welcome every time I walk to another office. Somebody says, "Welcome to Walmart."
Right.
Like, that would be like overdone, right?
Right.
But you can. But everybody should be actively thinking about what is that thing that they can.
Well, yeah, and it has to, you know, you're actively thinking about it. And I have this concept that companies should really be thinking about those interactions that you have that I think a lot of you could probably recite today all have something in common. They're typically two, if it's either a process or a person that's made you feel well, feel good, and that you remembered. And if it's a person, it typically is someone that always gets compliments from their customers. You may have people in your own business today that you're top of mind, you're like, yep, that person always gets a compliment. And it's typically followed by, they made me feel blank. They cared about me. They did this. They did this. They went out of their way. Those are what I call positive feeling generators. And everyone should be looking for them and obsessing about putting them in their organization.
Yeah.
And it's really, really important. And to your point, it made me think of it. Yes, you should be putting the signature moments and creating them, but they have to be authentic. And because people will sniff out fake and then something that's not authentic, and you'll actually then start to work against yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, okay, good. I'm glad you added that because I was thinking about that. Okay, so get out the building, go figure out what's going on, what are the friction points, what are the happy points, get rid of the pits, amplify the happy points. Now you got to figure out how you implement signature moments and for your customers, vendors,
Yep.
employees. What's the next thing that they need to do?
Well, then they start designing.
That's important.
So then they start designing for experience, and they always have to. When you design for experience, you have to start with your aim, your intention, that North Star. So you need to ask yourself, what is it you're designing to? And because there's something about the signature moment, and then you can have multiple ones, and each one of those things kind of creates the entire experience for the consumer and the team member that you're interacting with.
Right.
So you get your teams involved. They're the ones that typically know best. You start to educate, shift mindset. You need to make sure that actually, I need to back up for a minute. Before you design for experience, you need to do a gut check on, I know there's particularly small businesses, but when I'm working with larger companies, you can't start the design work until the leaders are there and their mindset has shifted and they understand what it means from an experience economy, and they think that and realize that it's important, not that it's just the fluffy stuff. It's sometimes the fluffy stuff's the hard stuff, but it is the essence of why they're there. They're there to create positive feelings for their team members and their consumers. And they've got to be there before you even start to design, because if you skip that step and you go to design, you'll have to backtrack and rework it.
I'm glad you said this. Actually validates the thought I was having last night about 9:30. I got to do this in the morning, which is you got to get leaders on board and committed, right, to this. And okay, so you go about designing this experience with an aim. What's the aim? Is it like?
It's who you want to be. It's we all have to do work, and this is like kind of that to be work, a to be list. It's who do you want to be? Who do you want to? Many of us, when setting up our organizations, have gone out and done the work of who are we telling the market that we are, and what was our mission? What's our vision? What's our values? Who do we want to be? So when you've got to isolate that and put that at the forefront of what you're designing in order to then start to create the experiences. And I'll give you an example just to help out. So if we were using Advent Health as an example, they want to deliver whole person care. And if they, and feeling whole, they want to extend the healing ministry of Christ. So if you take those things and you put them at the center of what you're designing, you will start to naturally design experiences that match who you are. You can't, don't look at someone else and go, oh, I need to say, welcome to Credo when everybody walks in. That's not you. You need to learn who you are and then start to create the experience that further exploits that and evokes the feeling of Credo that you want someone to feel.
Right.
And that, there's a method and a methodology of doing that. And you apply that method. That's something my company helps with. There's other experienced designers out there, and you can pull them in and kind of help you in that work and just sit there and walk through the design of that. And then once you design it, you've got to sustain it. and you've got to help leaders sustain momentum. And that is sometimes what I consider the not so fun work, but it's the crucial work, because you can say, oh, this is where I want to go. This is kind of how we're going to get there. Here's a design process of what that interaction would look like. You go tell all your leaders, hey, this is the new way. And you educate your employees. And then there's no embedded process in place. There's no validation checks. And I've just seen it so many times where what you designed for or what you intended will fall to the wayside if that's not embedded in who you are and the processes are in place and you're validating on a regular basis. And then you're recognizing when things work well, and you fix immediately at that time when things aren't working well. So retrospective fixing isn't very helpful. You've got to do it right then.
Okay, that's yeah. When you were talking through that, I was thinking like when you described the downtown Credo Coffee experience, that asked how much do you want to pay, and I remember I said, Ben, why do you do that? Right, and he goes, well, the thing is that he believes this thing called meaning, impact, and community, and helping people take small steps towards that, right? And the way that coffee does that is that there's these growers and they're his friends, and he wants to pay them more so they can have a better quality of life, right? But coffee is one of those trades, those things where we don't even think about the fact that there's a grower at the very bottom end of that line, that transaction, who's getting paid very, very small. And they don't make any money. And so, but it's become so transactional, right? You just go in, you don't think about it, you buy a cup of coffee, and most of that money goes to the distributor or the whatever, right? And so what he does in that moment is he says that he wants somebody to pause, and he wants to create attention and say, wait, to think about the fact that they are, he tells them why that's important, and then why it's important to name their own price. And so it forces them to make a choice. And that choice is initially with how much money they're going to spend. Are they going to spend, $2, which is fine, but it puts them almost in this like moral dilemma where you have to say, oh, like, do I just pay a little bit or do I pay more because I know this guy is paying the farmer directly? But yeah, that was a very intentional choice, because he's trying to disrupt people enough to take that small step, right? Which is maybe they just pay $1 more, right?
Yeah.
Or $2.
And it's always asked in a very nice way. How much would you like to pay? It's like, oh, they're so sweet. Like, they're asking me like that. And, it just reminds you that there's a bigger purpose. And, then there's positive. I mean, I could go on and on with Credo too, but there's positive messages on the wall. It's light and airy. There's great space to sit. There's really cool music. The product is great. So it is a wonderful experience, and the multi-sensory components definitely are in there.
Before we open it up to Q&A, I just want to, is there any other things along that journey that we talked about that's important for these entrepreneurs when creating experiences, or they should be aware of?
Well, a couple things, which is really the passion of a couple things for me kind of led the work I'm doing today, is just remember that emotions shape the way we experience our world. And I also am a firm believer that, our Earth, our time here on Earth should actually, it's going to feel a little sappy to folks, but it's kind of why I'm doing the social aspect. It's kind of why I'm doing the social aspect of the work that I'm doing too, that it should be filled with positive experiences, and no one should be left out. Everyone should be able to experience joy, no matter your race, your gender, your sexual preference. And when you're designing experience, make sure that you have that in mind, and put that also at the center of what you're doing. I just think that that's really important.
Yeah. I think one of the biggest things that I take away from this conversation, the other conversation that we had yesterday, was at the core of this, it is empathy, right? It's like your ability to be empathetic, right? Of your your staff needs, your employees needs,
Mhm.
your vendors needs, your customers needs. And if you do that really well, right, like you're intentionally trying to connect better with them and to help their lives be better, then the natural outcome is that customers will stay with you longer, employees will stay with you longer, and vendors will love you and probably give you more fair price, right? So,
Yeah.
and so I could see how like just that kind of level of empathy.
It's one more thing. It's what I call an experience first concept.
Yeah,
If you put experience first in everything you do in your approach, I promise that everything else will fall into place. Anytime I have seen huge success or metrics improve in organizations, whether that was engagement or retention or profits because of increased productivity, customer loyalty, it's always been centered around how someone or something, a process, made someone feel. And that just start with experience first and you won't go wrong. And ensure it's not just, the other thing is, you have to make sure it's not just another thing. Oh, it's that experience thing. How does it fit in the organization? You know how we're talking about that today. Really, you don't worry so much of how it fits or you have to apply it as another thing, but think about how experience is a way to do everything. It's weaved into all decision making. It's sitting right there when you're developing your strategic plan. It's right there when you're doing your key initiatives, when you're looking at your operational and your financial metrics. How do you think through how experience plays into that? And that's what I'd leave you with.
Oh, that's good. That's good. All right. Well, listen, I know the fellows probably have quite a few questions because I believe this is fascinating, so therefore they should think it's fascinating. But so fellows, let's switch out views real quick. Hold on one second here. All right, any of you have questions for Kim?
I'd like to.
Okay, there you go, Marco. Go ahead, drop us off.
Is that okay?
Yeah, go ahead.
Kimberly, pleasure to meet you.
Pleasure to meet you too.
When I left my job at Southeast University, my boss was adamant about being called Kimberly, so I can relate to you very much. The whole point about I guess in general, your hospitality experience, that's just weaved into me as a founder. My previous startup was helping serve restaurants, and what I kind of wanted to kind of hybrid question and make comment of is just how I went to Siesta Key for my girlfriend's birthday this past weekend, and I felt if anybody's been, the food and the beach is just amazing. I feel like it's a gem hiding in plain sight. But I wanted to touch on two experiences that I had, and that really kind of helped me understand just like how I should probably be delivering. I know that we have this Karen culture, that if you guys are familiar with Karen, the kind of always complaining.
Okay. Yeah.
You guys with me on the
It's my son. I just have to tell you, my son's a junior in high school, and he named his car Karen, and I didn't know why for the longest time. And that was why, apparently.
I started complaining about needing more gas too.
Yeah.
So the reason I just kind of segue into that is just the fact that I believe Karen, has that negative connotation that like, this person that has very high standards. But I think that there's also that line that is crossed where you are a Karen, where you're just complaining about everything and that it's not the company's fault. And so I think that what I kind of came to realize is that, you don't want to venture into the Karen territory, and that you want to be, there's that line. What breaks it is the empathy that you, as a company, know that what you can deliver to your customer. But there was just this one instance that I just wanted to share with everybody really quick. I booked a jet ski, tandem jet ski, and then we arrived a little early, which they told us to. They weren't there. And so, we waited for about 10 minutes. we said, you know what, we're just gonna grab lunch. And then the guy came and said, we basically said, do we have time for lunch? Can you push us an hour? We come back, an hour 15. And then he says like, okay, because you came back 15 minutes later, I have to, I can't get you guys out because there's this big group coming in. And so it's just like, okay, well, I understand I messed up, but at the same time, you kind of gave me clearance, and I don't understand how 15 minutes makes a difference there. But meanwhile, it's like, all these other experiences just like went all like it pulled it all the way out. So basically, I guess what I wanted to kind of get your thought on was, how do you feel like that threshold? It's like, are you aware of like what that threshold is as to like how much like service we should expect of a place, especially depending on the brand and kind of premium like delivery and how much they focus on experience? Because I think just in general, like society might not know like that threshold based on different places, if you're following me.
Yeah. So just let me, well, two things. I want to make sure I understand the second half of that question. But to your point as designing or fixing things for the Karens, you're absolutely right. A lot of times what will happen in organizations is they will first go to the squeaky wheel, and those, maybe those complaints that are a little more rare, but they're really intense, and they'll start all of a sudden, wanting to fix that or design or start to spend their time with that. And I would not suggest that. You want to fix things that are more systematic and are more of a pit, if you will, from a negative experience for most people, not just the Karen. So you're right about that. And then the second thing is, are you asking me how much effort people should spend on every single interaction, even if there's an experience within? So it sounds like to me what you're saying is the jet ski experience was amazing. And when I was on the jet ski, it was great. And I had that one interaction. And should that jet skiing company really be focused so much on training that person, or is that interaction really make that much of a difference in their business model? Or because really they're there for the jet ski? Is that what you're asking me?
Let me clarify the jet ski experience. So
okay.
there are two jet ski companies in Siesta Key. We called one, and they were so bold as to say, I like to grab a deal when possible. And they said, oh yeah, we don't do deals here. We're smaller, but the other guys might. And so the fact, I should have probably, what I learned this weekend is that if you're talking to a company that's so bold as to say, go to the competition, like, and give them the business, it's like, I'm going to give you the business instead, because they're so like bold about it. Because what ended up happening is I went there, they did give me a deal, but then like that experience happened. And they said, we can't service you. So we ultimately went back. So I would have saved myself that time. And so, I think that was really just, I guess I'm really highly critical of service. And so like, really the question is like, how do I know like what to expect is good? Although I feel like I have a good litmus of what, and how people should be treated.
Yeah. So if you as a consumer, or you're asking as a business owner, what should you expect? Because I mean, as a consumer, what I would tell you is you kind of already know. You're explaining this interaction, right? You knew that it wasn't the best interaction because it burned a memory in your mind that wasn't necessarily a positive one. And if someone asks you, and they happen to go to Siesta Key and they say they want to go to jet skiing, you're probably going to give the jet skiing company that you didn't have that negative experience with as an example of who to go with, right? So they just made a huge mistake there. As a business owner, how do you know? You'll know by your immediate feedback or reaction that you're getting in the middle of that interaction. So whether it's a team member or a consumer, You have to teach your teams and yourself to listen for the feedback and the positive cues at that time and actually care about it. So people who are putting consumers at the center of everything they do care and listen for positive feedback at all times. And for me, if it is just neutral or there's no feedback, you probably got to add another layer in there to make people smile.
I think complacency is a big killer, and every time I go, I always try to give constructive feedback, just so that other people behind me don't experience the same thing. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, we have let's see, six more minutes. Does any other fellow have questions? Go ahead, Shay.
Hi, Kimberly. How are you?
Hi, Shay.
Hi. I was wondering if you had any resources or any other thoughts on creating experience in a tech product. So you mentioned Amazon, you mentioned Apple. For those of us working to start up on a really small budget in our tech product, what are some of those key things that we can think about and design?
Absolutely. So I'm very involved, I have a lot of experience with this in the sense that my boyfriend happens to be someone who is completely into the tech world and developing tech products. So as an example, I think what it's important to focus on is what is the user's experience, the user interface experience with that product. And so as another example, he's working on developing, spine surgeon, working on developing, because he's really kind of a geeky engineer guy, and that's what he really wants to do with his life. But he's working on developing a new way in which surgeons could do surgery. Not having to look at a screen or a monitor, and instead look through a device that will enable them to do the surgery in a more safe manner and not lose their vision from that field, right? I'm sharing it with you is because all of the design principles that went into developing this device, he put experience first. How heavy is it? What does it look like? I mean, essentially, he's got to sell this to other surgeons and other hospitals. And if the surgeons complain and say, yeah, it might be sexy, it might do it, but like my neck is killing me at the end of the day when I put these things on my head, and it doesn't really stay on very long, or I have to keep charging it. That it's not going to do them any good. So you've got to really focus on and do your research and studies and let people touch and feel and use that product or device and tell you where that friction or the problems are, so you can design that out of it.
Thank you.
Cool. Any other questions? We're good or no?
May I just ask one? Thank you, Kimberly. When we actually insert ourselves into kind of the relationship between two parties, is there a way to help facilitate that experience kind of for both sides of the market? And how do you uncover those key areas of intersection to help facilitate that experience?
So be the connector to where they're having a good experience with each other.
Yes. Yeah. And if we can do that, that is the game changer, because that relationship that we're trying to manage is tenuous at best. And so by improving that experience, is so.
I would say, as a facilitator of experience, it's really important to do the work ahead of time and probably know both sides really well, so you can manage any pitfalls or negative aspects that may occur ahead of time, or help and be ready to bridge it when you know that that might come up. So I think just kind of knowing what you're going into, but then if it's about a conversation, I mean, is this like a one conversation in a relationship you're trying to bridge, or an actual transaction and interaction with something?
Transaction and interaction. So the renter and landlord relationship through communication, through onboarding, through some of the other elements that we touch.
Oh, so great point. I mean, one of the first things I would probably do is see if you can't get in there and even help with the onboarding experience. So that's huge. And what is the onboarding experience for the person that's getting involved at that point? What do they do to create an amazing experience right at the very beginning for that first impression?
Well, yeah, and in many instances, it's really antiquated. So we're okay. I got it. Thank you.
Yeah. We feel free to call me anytime after, and I'd be more than happy just to brainstorm with you and maybe come up with some ideas for you.
Amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Anyone is absolutely that, that's out to anyone. So I think you have my LinkedIn profile.
Yeah, we got you. We got all your information.
Yeah. Just DM me. I'll help you.
All right, cool. Well, listen, it was a pleasure being with you today. This experience has been wonderful. I'm not sure what your signature moment was in this, but maybe if I interact with you a few more times, I could figure it out. But we appreciate you. And as I said, like, we're all about showcasing why Orlando should be a stop for any social entrepreneur. You were one of those people. And you did a really good job and gave us a really compelling case and argument on why people should stop through here. So thank you for that.
Thanks, Kyle.
All right,
Thank
cool.
you. Bye, guys. Really nice to meet you all.